I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm saying to you, we have not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't guarantee the future.
Yeah, but I mean, you'd understand somebody watching that, especially as it gets shared on Twitter, they freak out. It sounds like a genocidal call.
Cry babies. Cry babies.
I'm not calling for the slaughter of white people, at least for now.
I can't give a guarantee of the future, especially when things are going the way they are.
Subtext.
Especially if things are going the way they are, there will be a revolution in this country, I can tell you now. There will be an unled revolution. An unled revolution is the highest form of anarchy.
All right, you heard Malema, Julius Malema. He is head of a political group there, the EFF. They're saying that the African National Conference is following their lead. Now, they're calling for the confiscation of land. He's saying, I'm not calling for the murder of white people just yet. Of course, he's danced around on stage saying, kill the Boer, shoot him, and so forth. He said, we're going to cut the throat of whiteness. But he said, you know, I'm not calling for it just yet. The guy said, are you talking about not yet? And he goes, oh, well, not yet. People who say that this is genocide, they're just a bunch of crybabies. So we have joining us right now, Simon Roche. He was once an ANC activist. And now he has seen where these communists are leading. They're in an argument with Malema as to whose idea this was, who gets credit for the idea of stealing land in South Africa. Simon Roche is now the head of the office of the headquarters of the world's largest non-state civil defense organization, Suidlanders of South Africa. You can find them at suidlanders.org, SUIDLANDERS.org. Also on Twitter at Suidlanders, SUIDLANDERS. Thank you for joining us, Simon.
Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Knight.
A lot has happened in the last 24 hours. We had this tweet from President Trump that has basically had a big impact in your area of the world, hasn't it?
Yeah, very big impact. It spreads through South Africa like wildfire. And it's not the end of things. I must tell you, Mr. Knight, that there are some very, very heavyweight people around the world who have followed this on Infowars and other channels, and who are picking up on it now, who are coming out to South Africa, who are paying a lot of attention to what's going on. So we are at present in a very, very anxious time. There's a huge threat, but we're getting people really on our side big time now.
That's good. And President Trump is aware of this. He responded as part of his tweet. He put Tucker Carlson and Fox News there. I think he saw a report that Tucker Carlson had done, which is good. It's getting a lot of traction. And President Trump saw this. He said, I have asked Secretary of State Pompeo to closely study the South Africa land and farm seizures and the expropriations and the large-scale killing of farmers. South African government is now seizing land from white farmers. And they have pushed back on this. And they have said, oh, no, it's actually not very many people at all have been killed. That's not the case, though, is it?
No, it's not the case. According to the figures that were released on approximately the 4th of May, but reported for the first time on Saturday, the 5th of May this year, and by the way, those figures had not been released for the previous 7 years. That tells you something. If the government stubbornly refuses to release the figures pertaining to farm murders, that should say everything. But nevertheless, on Saturday, the 5th of May, the figures were released, and it revealed, there's some gaps in the figures, but it revealed that the minimum possible number of farm murders is at a rate of 169 per 100,000 per year. Now, if you compare that to the European average homicide rate of about 1 per 100,000, or the US homicide rate of 4.88 per 100,000, or indeed of South Africa's nationwide homicide rate of 34 per 100,000, 169 per 100,000. People can say whatever they like. Excuse me for getting hot under the collar, but we didn't present those figures. This is simple arithmetic, and it's beyond dispute.
But it is being disputed by the police there. They're lying about this. They're saying they just released a report back in June that was referred to by the Wall Street Journal, pushing back against President Trump. And they said, well, the number of people killed on farms has declined over the last 20 years. Absolutely amazing. When you talk about the fact that here in the United States, we got a murder rate of slightly over 4, and that includes killing fields that we call Chicago, where you get 60 people or so killed over a weekend. You know, the murder rate is a little over 4, and you're talking about, what was it, 150? You said the murder rate?
The minimum possible rate. There, as I say, there are some gaps in their data. The minimum possible rate is 169 per 100,000, but it may be as high as I demonstrated with simple arithmetic to a team of people that visited us yesterday, 224 per 100,000.
That's amazing. Well, what we're seeing here, and I put this in the context of what people are being taught in universities. I talked to one of our crew here who was just on a missions trip to South Africa, and who was talking about the people that he engaged in universities and how they are talking the same way that we see people talk here in the universities in America. They've been brainwashed with this idea of privilege to the extent that they think that it justifies violence against people, that it justifies theft against people. And so we look at these same issues that are going to be coming to America pretty soon. I think that are going to be happening, that are happening to you right now, especially when we look at the ANC and the EFF. That's Malema, the guy that we just played the clip of, saying, well, I'm not calling for the execution of white people just yet, but that may happen. You stay there. And they say, well, this is genocide. And he goes, hey, a bunch of crybabies about that. Anyway, they're arguing. They're saying, well, we're telling the ANC what to do, Malema says. And the ANC says, no, it was our idea to steal stuff from people. Actually, we had the idea that we would put it in the Constitution. And then that gets to the fundamental idea that we're going to talk about, you know, if you got something in the Constitution or you got something in the government, they're not necessarily, because of democracy, going to recognize human rights of people. We put things in the Constitution to recognize human rights, but even if we take these human rights out of the Constitution, it doesn't take those human rights away from us, does it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, for them, the end justifies the means, and the end is always something politically correct. And the end never diminishes. It's always protracted. You know, they will tell you that the answer to America's problems right now is Roe versus Wade. Then they'll tell you it's to take God out of schools. Then they'll tell you it's not to have a democratic election. In other words, Donald Trump won, but he shouldn't be there, and he didn't get the popular vote, and he played by the rules, and that's not good enough. It never, never, never ends, and you can trace this back to wherever you like. The Federal Reserve, the Immigration Acts of the early 60s in the USA, and to similar things in South Africa. They will always push it a step and a step and a step and a step further until fundamentally they have defeated the core values that have built civilization over, nominally speaking, the past 2,000 years.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I see when I look at the American universities. That's why I focus on what just happened at UNC, which I said is basically University of North Carolina, not really distinguishable from the ANC. Around the country, and it doesn't matter whether it's a civil war, whether it's Christopher Columbus, or whether it's a president, or whether it's which side they were fighting on the Civil War. They want to tear down the foundations of this country. They want to tear down the culture of this country. They are Marxist. And once they tear down the foundations of our culture and our law, they will tear down the foundations of our farms, of our homes, of our business, and of our lives. We're going to be right back with Simon Roche. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Simon Roche. He is in South Africa. He's head of the office, of the headquarters of the world's largest non-state civil defense organization, Suidlanders of South Africa, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It is SUIDLANDERS.org if you want to get information about that. And we're going to have him tell you what they are doing to defend themselves. Because, folks, if the government comes in and says, we're going to change the Constitution to abrogate fundamental human rights, that is not what we have always had in the West. We have, in the words of the Declaration of Independence, established governments to protect the human rights that are given to us by God. And we see this kind of discussion when we talk about the deplatforming of Infowars by Google and by Facebook and others. We hear from the people who have always hated corporations, the left. They hate corporations, they hate private property. But now they say, oh, corporations have private rights and they can censor if they want to. No, it's a human right to have free speech. And I'm not going to turn that over to corporation or a government. Of course, these corporations make the rules, but then they violate the rules. They have double standards. I don't want double standards. I want something like what is outlined in the First Amendment. But if the government were to go in tomorrow and to say we're going to abrogate the First Amendment or the Second Amendment, that wouldn't take away our human rights. If the government in South Africa comes in and says, oh, we're going to do this legally, we're going to change the Constitution, and then we'll confiscate property from white farmers. Why? Because they're white. That doesn't make it legitimate. As I said when I was covering the Bundy standoff, I said, these guys are going to get the cows, they're going to get their property, or we're going to become the property. If you don't have property rights, folks, you are the property. You are the slave if you don't have property rights. If you don't have the right to self-defense, if you don't have a right to free speech, you are a slave when you give up your liberties. And they can't take it away with a piece of paper, legitimately. And I want to talk to Simon about what they're doing to stand up to this, because it may come down to force. Hope it doesn't come down to that. But there's something that came up when I was reading this article, excellent article from New American, Simon, and they talked about the history of South Africa. And I was absolutely amazed that 100 years ago, there were only 6 million people in South Africa. And now the population is over 50 million, but the white population has only increased by 3 million. So 100 years ago, the entire population was 6 million. The number of white South Africans has increased by 3 million. But then the rest of the people are immigrants who've come in from black immigrants who've come in from neighboring countries in the last 100 years. I was not aware of that. And I don't think most Americans are. I think that really is a very interesting point that's not being put out here, because the narrative is we can take this property from them because they took it from us. And that's not really the case, is it?
No, it's not really the case. And this is one of the reasons why we would say that what is befalling us now is going to befall the USA and Europe before too long, because the progression of events is identical. It comes down to a sort of a globalist agenda. In simple terms, the black population of South Africa has grown enormously. Yes, to some extent by immigration from outside neighboring countries. It was very popular during apartheid for countries, for blacks in liberated African countries to come and seek work and a better lifestyle in South Africa. But above and beyond that, there has been a massive increase in the black South African indigenous population over the past 100 years, clearly down to surplus money, better nutrition, employment, clean running water, electricity, and good health services that were provided by the racist apartheid government to black people. In fact, to this day, the largest hospital in the world is in the township of Soweto, the Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital, and it's surrounded by many other hospitals. So the point is that this tiny black population has exploded something phenomenally. And they're now saying we don't have land. And people like Suidlanders would say, well, hang on a second. It is true that 100 years ago, you had the minority of the land. Nobody's saying that there was an equal distribution. But at the time that you had that land, it was hectares and hectares and hectares. In other words, tens of acres per person. This is mathematics. Whether it's convenient mathematics or inconvenient mathematics, changes nothing. To this day, the tribal trust of the AmaZulu people, the Zulu people in the province of KwaZulu-Natal on the east coast of South Africa, occupies 32% of the land of that province and always has done so. It is it's a fiction, it's a fallacy, it's a lie. It's an absolute fairy tale to say that black people only have 10% of the land and they were overcrowded from the beginning and it's so sad and it's too bad. The facts are that a small black population was given relatively large tracts of land, as much as 32% in some areas.
Yeah, that's interesting when they talk about the fact that you took the land from them, that the Zulus have had, as you point out, the same amount of land that they have today, they've always had. But it has been this massive population increase over the last century. It's been nearly 50 million. It's 52 million today. It was 6 million a century ago. And only 3 million of that increase has come from white Afrikaners. The rest of it has been birth rate and immigration. We're seeing the same thing happening, as you pointed out, in Europe. Massive waves of immigration coming in there. Same thing happening in America as we see the Hispanic population. They're saying we have a right to all of the American Southwest. They call it Aslan. They say we're going to make America Mexico again and so forth. So we know where this is going to happen. The same type of thing is going to happen. The only way that you're going to have a peaceful and prosperous future is if you support the idea of private property, which means a willing buyer and a willing seller. That's the only way that you can proceed forward, because the only alternative to that is violence, civil war, and confiscation, which is what the communists want.
Well, this gives the lie again. Thank you for bringing this up. The one point that I wanted to make a minute ago is that you guys are willing to talk about this in these terms. Our own media is not willing to do so. So we have to believe that there's an agenda. They're overlooking basic, simple facts, real, actual facts. And there's the fact that they're not willing to talk about it, as they're not willing to talk about truths like, for example, Charlottesville, to which I was a witness last year, means that there's a similar theme, a similar puppet master in both of our societies. You know, you speak about the willing buyer, willing seller. 4,323 farms that were given over to the government on the willing seller, willing buyer basis by white farmers in South Africa have never been given to the black people for whom they were intended. 4,323 farms. So we've got another Zimbabwe story where the government says we're taking the land for the good of the people. It's what's fair and right and just, except that we're keeping 2/3 for ourselves.
I can't believe that, Simon. You're telling me that socialists who go out and expropriate property, as they did in Venezuela and all these other communist countries, that they would keep it for themselves? I mean, these people are kleptocrats. They're not even socialists. They're just thieves out there. They will use any kind of a veneer, whether it is, you know, from each according to his ability to each according to his need, or whether it's black against white. They will use any kind of lie to get what they want, which is money and power, and they will keep that money and power. That's what Hugo Chavez and the rest of them have always done. Yeah,
something like 1/3 of the Zimbabwean population, it's estimated to be between 3 million and 5 million people, live in South Africa. That's how wonderful their land expropriation process was. And it's very well known that the majority of that land, or the prime pieces of the land, landed up in the hands of the Zimbabwean government. And it will be the same in the USA. You're on an almost identical trajectory. The point will come where your ostensibly benevolent, altruistic presidents, let's say Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, God forbid that she should be a president, but they'll be telling you that they're doing it for the good of the people while lining their pockets more than anybody else ever did.
That's right. And we can already see Sweden, one of the places where everybody was, oh, yes, let's do that. We have an obligation to bring everybody in. They're burning the country down. People there are waking up. Are we going to wake up here before it's too late? Will it be too late for South Africa? Stay with us. We've got one more segment with Simon Roche, and I want to ask him what they are doing to defend themselves. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm David Knight. I'm the lunatic you're looking for here, maybe. We'll see. We're talking to Simon Roche out of South Africa. We're going to talk to him about what they're doing to defend themselves. Because you know what? I'm not going to be shamed by the social justice warriors to defend these people when you've got Marxists and racists saying we're going to steal their land, and if they resist, we're going to kill them in an act of genocide, and brag about that. We're going to cut the throat of whiteness. I see this is happening in the United States. I understand where this is going, and I understand the globalist agenda, and I understand the attempt to silence us and anybody who wants to talk about this by using CNN or Google, or they're not going to silence us, and they're not going to shame us into allowing this to happen. Because first they're going to come for the South Africans. Then they're going to come for you. They're going to come for the Italians. They're going to come for the Swedes. They're going to come for the Hungarians. They're going to come for the French and the Germans. Every last one of us. This is a globalist agenda. And they want to overthrow every one of these countries because they don't want to have anybody who can resist their power. They want to level everything so they can be the last man standing. That is the tactic that they use, country by country, and that is the globalist tactic that they're using. So I want to go back to Simon Roche. Simon, tell us what you're doing. I've got this bio here from you saying that in March of this year, you guys opened a campaign to raise funds to get vital necessities for civilians, things like diesel fuel. You said some of this stuff was promised to you 6 or 7 times by senior ANC government leaders. What's going on there in terms of supplies, and how are you defending yourself, and how can people help?
Yes, well, we're a civil defense organization constituted under the specific provisions of international law, particularly Protocols 1 and 2, additional to the Geneva Conventions, and I emphasize the phrase specific provisions. We are people, an identifiable ethnic group as per the law, who are planning to defend ourselves in the event of nationwide anarchy. We're taxpayers, we're family people, we're not instigating an insurrection or a sedition of the state and the society. In fact, it's a well-known fact that our core membership, Suidlanders' core membership, is acknowledged to be the single greatest tax contributor in South African society. Now, when you factor that only 3.1 million people in South Africa pay income tax, and there are 16.3 million people on social grants, our people, God-fearing, decent, respectable, law-abiding people, are keeping this country afloat. End of story. There's no dispute. So we're not here to cause trouble, but we are here to protect ourselves in the event of a crisis. Our plan is to get people out of cities, our people, out of cities and into remote areas where it is demographically favorable. In other words, where there are not teeming millions of people who are hungry and angry in a time of crisis. I think I mentioned to you previously, Mr. Knight, that on about the 3rd of November last year, our Minister of Defense said that if white people stand together once again in a peaceful protest, as they did on Monday, the 31st of October, a completely peaceful protest, nothing burned down, which is unusual for South Africa, they would bring a genocide upon themselves. So we have the EFF threatening a genocide. We have the Minister of Defense threatening a genocide. We are really genuinely embattled. So in March of this year, we opened a campaign with Free Starter in the USA, a crowdfunding platform closely associated with the conservative portion of the USA, associated with the Trump organization and entity. And they have been raising funds for us to purchase dieseline and medicine and other vital necessities for civilians in the event of a crisis. We will come together in a particular part of South Africa, which is more or less secret, and which is very much along the lines of Nicholas Nassim Taleb's anti-fragility. It's not a specific place, it's not a specific time, but it is a specific idea. By gathering a critical mass of people together, we will be able to ensure that we are not picked off one by one in the event of the crisis, which our government is promising, and which seems to be at our doorstep now. Even liberal organizations, to our astonishment, have in the past few days been talking about a civil war. So it's no longer just the
conservatives we heard that with
saying,
the clip from Malema. We heard that from the clip from Malema where he says, well, I'm not calling for the slaughter of white people yet. The guys go, wait, do you realize how that's going to sound? It's going to sound like genocide. And it's like, yeah, well, you know, things like that happen. Oh, it'll be an unled revolution. That's the only thing that he did to pull back. He said, well, I'm not going to lead it. Other people will do it, but it's going to come, and we're going to have anarchy. They're saying there's going to be anarchy. And he's saying it's going to be other people. He's going to be leading, but he's saying, oh, make me the leader. Give me all the property that you confiscate from these people, and everything will be just fine, right? But it's not going to be.
Yeah, it's not going to be like that. It is never like that. Julius Malema has been stoking the fires of discontent amongst the helpless and hopeless Black African population of South Africa. Those people who are poorly educated, have very few prospects, and can't see any hope ahead of them and can't do anything about it. Hopeless and helpless. He has been stoking the fires of discontent in such a way that we sense that now the dam wall is about to break. And it's a metaphor that is being used over and over and over again. It is as if there is a crack in the dam wall, and when it does give way, it will give way all at once. You know, it's not going to be a timid little leak that leaks over days and weeks and months and years. It's going to happen all at once. And he can take full responsibility for it, but he has been aided and abetted by our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, who has lied through his teeth about things like the original sin of South Africa being when the whites stole all the land, when it's a matter of recorded fact that there were no Bantu black people west of the Great Fish River when the whites and the blacks first met in 1777, meaning that at least 40% of the land was never stolen. And I've just recently come from a farm near the town of Tarkastad, or the town of Queenstown in the Eastern Cape, where the farmers showed me their family graves going back to 1789. Now, how is it possible that land could have been, I mean, it's preposterous, it's absurd.
Oh yeah, but it doesn't matter because they can erase history. And that's what we're seeing happening here. Just as I talked about UNC, they're tearing, as they're shouting Tar Heel, and they're tearing down the Civil War statue of the guy who represents what a Tar Heel is. They have removed all connection to history and to reality with these kids, and all they do is feed them this Marxist narrative of white skin privilege, because they realized that here in America they weren't going to make it into an economic class warfare, which is what the Marxists in Europe were able to do. They said, no, we're going to have to do a race war. And that's why this pattern that is happening in South Africa is so important for Americans to understand as well. Now, if they want to stand with you again, that is Free Starter. That is, Starter is spelled S-T-A-R-T-R, no E. It's not E-R, but S-T-A-R-T-R, correct? And can they find that information if they go to your website?
Yeah, and they can find a PayPal link on our website. Everything is easy to find. You've already given the website, Suidlanders.org. Everything is to be found there. It's very easy, very convenient, and people can make a donation. The money will be used well, particularly for vital necessities for civilians. Our first goal is not to fight. Our first goal is to protect our mothers, sisters, and daughters. That's who we are. That is our fundamental nature. But if push comes to shove, make no mistake, under international law, we will create a defensible perimeter in the space that we occupy to save our children from the horrors that are being promised to us.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that doesn't come to that. But the rhetoric is being stepped up. Hopefully, President Trump can talk some sense to these people, maybe even some of the bankers, because the bankers are talking about this is going to be economic collapse if this were to happen. They've already seen it happen in Zimbabwe. This is not a theory. They've already seen this happen. What happens after they just come in and confiscate the land? As you pointed out, you have massive numbers of refugees from Zimbabwe that have flooded into South Africa because of what was done to that country under the same policies that are now being pushed there. So, Simon, we hope that's not going to happen, but keep in touch with us. You're welcome to come back at any time to talk to us and to explain what's going on there. Good luck to you. And again, that website is Suidlanders.org. That is Suidlanders.org. Thank you very much, Simon. Before we go to break,
thank you very much, Mr. Knight, and God bless you for what you've done for us.
Well, God bless you. We hope that God protects you as we move forward in the future. It's a very, very dangerous thing. And folks, this is the kind of globalist agenda that is being pushed to tear down every country of Western civilization. You need to understand that. This is not a unique situation. This is a pattern that is being done everywhere. Now, we've got just about 30 seconds left here, and I want to tell you a little bit about the products that keep us independent as we're under attack from Google and others. We've got a couple new products, Ultimate Bone Broth, 50% off. Also a new product, Ultimate Female Force, also 50% off. You can find those at InfoWarsStore.com. And one special that is exclusive to our audience. That is the Wake Up America Patriot Blend Coffee, 20% off with the code REALNEWS. That's 20% off of both the original and immune support of Wake Up America Patriot Blend Coffee with the code REALNEWS. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I'm David Knight.
Look at that. Everybody else is just like yellow or clear. That's because it's been denatured, it's been watered down. We didn't do that. You think I would metaphysically sell you something that this is the very best I can get? I'd rather go to hell than do that. I will only give you the maximum best info, the maximum truth, the maximum product, because I want that goodwill. What I do to you, I do to myself. Don't you get the big secret? You ever seen fish oil look like that? No, you never seen that, have you? And this little jewel right here is solid, liquid consciousness. Look it up. Find out how even the FDA and the government admits fish oil is incredible. The number one thing anybody can do for themselves is take good fish oil or krill oil. Just like our information is dynamite, so are our products, InfoWarsStore.com.